Check, 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 check. Am I too loud? Am I too loud if I talk like this? All right. Hey guys, what is going on? My name is Virtual Riot, and I'm in a different location today, as you can see. I'm moving out of LA and to Minneapolis, which is also the reason why I don't have my studio set up right now, so I can't film a cool intro. I hope that's okay. But I've got something cool for you today. I've made a lot of Ableton effect racks over the years, and I want to show them to you and give them away to my Patreons. I've got 25 effect racks that all just use Ableton stock, so you can use them without needing any third-party plugins. And we're gonna go through them one by one, and then at the end, I'll make like a short 8 to 16 bar loop where we will use a couple of them. I hope you're all gonna download them and use them for your own productions and make something nice with them. So let's go. So these are all the racks over here that I've made, and I'll literally just load up a init saw in Serum so you can kind of hear what they do. Most of them are useful for bass sounds, but obviously you can put them on whatever you want. Some of them are very useful for synthy stuff, for pads, for melodies, or the washouts, for example, are obviously really useful for transitions or for build-ups. Also, disclaimer, some of these are incredibly CPU intense. Actually, I forgot to note that on this one, because that one is mental. All right, okay, here we go. The first one is the Crunch Rack. You can kind of hear what it does. It does add crunch. I'm gonna modulate the volume here. So you can hear it adds crunch depending on the input volume. You can adjust the volume of that crunch that's being added. The threshold of input volume when crunch is being added. If it's too high, it just becomes like kind of sustained and not crispy and crunchy anymore. So you gotta dial that in. Density. More or less crunch. And then finally stereo. Whether or not all those crunchy artifacts are supposed to be like really wide or super mono. Quick demonstration on a bass sound. It doesn't work on absolutely every sound, but in some cases where you're missing a little bit of top end and also width because your sound's very mono, this thing can be very helpful. All right, this next one's fairly simple. It is a multiband split frequency shifter that goes up and down by 500 Hertz. And here's a quick example on a bass sound. So especially if you have a sound that has somewhat of a tonality, and for like a B section or a variation, you just want to modulate the like pitch of your FM modulator. Instead, try this. Also, if you get it right, this like atonal. Now there are a lot more even harmonics. Fun stuff. Next up is one of my favorites, the Detune Rack. So what's happening here is there are multiple chains where the input sound is being detuned up and down with grain delays to kind of imitate a unison effect. My input, again, is just a standard saw wave. And then if I turn this on, there are a bunch more voices now. So we have some adjustments here. If I turn voices all the way down, there's nothing. Then it adds 2. Over here it adds 2 more. And at the end it adds another 2, so in total there's 6. This is the overall gain for the detuned extra voices. This is a really hard low cut for the detuned voices. This spreads them left and right. They're already kind of stereo, but sometimes that can be cool. And then this kind of just EQs those voices besides that low cut. Like as you can hear, this does add some muddy low end, so I could low cut it, but I could just slightly take that out. The highs sound kind of nice, I don't want to take away too many. And then feedback kind of just turns up the feedback in the grain delays, which sometimes can be interesting. But on a high value, it'll sound weird. It does sound cool on rhythm basses though. Just for comparison, I'm just going to load a bass sound real quick. And I'm just going to use all the voices. Turn the gain all the way up, but also use the low cut. because this sound has a lot of sub. And even with the feedback all the way up, almost sounds like a reverb. Might want to dial back the gain a little bit. Before, after. To be fair, a little messier, but also a little bit wider. And if you turn the low cut real high, you're only getting that messiness on your top end, and it widens a mono sound for you. Alright, the next one is a simple little thing, but I really like it, and it might be easy to build this yourself, but this is just my version of it. So it's a delay that distorts as it delays. So I got a super saw here, or even just a simple saw. Sounds kind of cool. You can adjust the feedback of the delay, how much drive it's supposed to apply. Especially if you play a chord, then that distorts even more. The filter kind of sets the flavor of the delay. This is the overall volume. Without that, that's off. And the delay time is synced. So this isn't like milliseconds, this is synced to your host tempo. So this is the Gnarl Rack, and to best demonstrate it, we kind of need a sound that is very squarey with like odd harmonics. So I just picked this one from an old Serum presets pack of mine. Classic FM bass, and basically what it does is adding in even harmonics. It almost sounds like there's a saw wave added to the sound. And even for not squarey bass sounds, it can still add a little bit of crunch. For example, this preset already is kind of crunchy, but with a Gnarl Rack, almost sounds like amplitude modulation. Okay, next up is something that many have done before, but this is my version, my Growl Rack. So this has a lot of macros, and if they are the same color, that means they kind of work together, especially the phaser, frequency and feedback, or the filter, frequency and LFO over here. I'm just gonna put in a saw wave and show you what happens. So we're just sending in this, and that's what comes out. So we've got our filter frequency, LFO speed. Then we've got different kinds of noises that can be blended in. So this is without any noise. Then we've got white noise, or this bit crush noise. And you can change the pitch of that one. Next up, there's a little bit of extra drive, which can be fun. Then this is the overall OTT power. And then mostly this vowel-y sound comes from the phaser. You can adjust its frequency and its feedback so that you find like a good spot where it sounds. That sounds kind of nice. And alternatively, or in combination with the phaser, I've added these macros over here, which add a vowel-y EQ. So I've labeled them kind of what they sound like. There's a little post EQ, just to like beef it up a little bit, and we've got a vocoder. Okay, this next one, I have to admit, is inspired by a video by Andrew Wong that I watched, where he just took Ableton stock effects and put 100 in a row and just wanted to see what they sound like. So what I did here is I invented the hyper chorus. So I'm just gonna open it up so you can see what happens. If I turn this first knob up, it turns on all these choruses. So like up to like 30 or something, all of these turn on. And then all the other knobs, I'm just going to open these up so you can see it. All these other knobs kind of remote control them all together. All of the different parameters like the feedback, the delay time, and the dry and wet. So you can control them all together and you just get an insane chorus effect, which sounds really fun. And all I'm going to put in is a saw wave. I'm going to just show you, okay? Gotta be careful with the feedback knob. That's why I painted it red. So kind of regardless what you put into this, this is what it sounds like. And just mess around with the knobs and definitely put a limiter after it because it can get loud. All right, this next one is basically my attempt at recreating the plugin Soothe just with Ableton stock devices. So what Soothe does is it dynamically reacts to very harsh audio and just dips those bit, kind of like Track Spacer and Voxengo Soniformer kind of works like that. But so Soothe works in a spectral way, but it is rather expensive, especially for like producers who are just starting. So I try to rebuild something like this. So you can kind of see what's happening here. Here are all these EQ points, and I've made this patch, and it's kind of harsh. I've made it intentionally harsh just for demonstrational reasons. Like in this top end here. So if I turn it on, you can see these EQ points dynamically reacting to the input volume. So I've got power. If I go too hot, it starts to sound a little bit spectrally. The Q knob adjusts the spikiness for all of these points together. And then attack and release just means how fast this reacts. So if I, for example, turn the release all the way up, takes a little bit longer for them to get back into place. Way snappier if I turn this all the way down. And with attack up, some of the transients keep coming through again. Okay, this one is my kind of Ableton stock version of texture. So it just adds white noise depending on the input volume of whatever you put into it. I'm going to use this patch. It's got a bit of white noise. Just for demonstrational reasons, I'm going to turn it off. And then I'm going to turn the rack on. So power is obviously how loud that white noise is. Frequency is how bright or dark it is. And then width is how wide the frequency range of this noise is. If you open it up, you can actually see what's happening. So obviously I'm using erosion here, but it is reacting to the input sound in a specific way that you can adjust with this macro down here. So you can see it going up and down, and it is reacting to the input sound, but you can put a low cut on what it is reacting to. So if I turn that low cut off, obviously because this sound has a lot of sub, the noise is always on and it is not reacting to this rhythm that the sound has. So if I cut off the low end and it's only reacting to everything above 1 kilohertz, now it's a lot more dynamic. And obviously, if you're feeling frisky and you're opening this up, you can change the noise style from wide to just normal noise or even to this bit crush kind of sound. If you do that, all the other macros still work. All right, next up is a rack where I'm using the vocoder in a saturating way. And there's a little cleanup macro down here as well to like just adjust EQing and compression afterwards. And it works best on sounds that are kind of crunchy and like have a little bit of crunchy texture to them. I've got this preset here. It's somewhat crunchy. There's a little bit in it. So I'm going to turn this on. So by default, if this is on 0, the vocoder is completely off. So this turns it on. And all the way up, it becomes watery and gets this kind of liquid sound. Then with cleanup, it kind of takes away a little bit of the harsh top and brings in more of the very fresh high end above 10 kilohertz. But if your sound isn't as crunchy, this works especially well with the Gnarl Rack. So I'm going to put that on, and then I'm going to run it through the Vocoder rack. Now this sounds kind of crunchy and a lot more brittle and liquidy, and I really like that. And this also works best in combination with what we're going to look at next, the Ableton stock Phat rack. Okay, so this is what you've all been waiting for. My Ableton stock version of the Phat rack. We've got 4 macros. We've got an input and output volume, which are just utilities at the beginning and end, which are sort of important because depending on how loud your bass is that you're going to put into this, it might hit the distortion harder or less hard, and that'll give you a different sound. And up here, we've got the 2 main knobs, the Phat knob, which turns up all the compression and distortion. And I've adjusted it so that it doesn't get louder. At the end, there's a utility that brings down the volume accordingly to how much everything else is bringing it up, so you can actually hear the difference. Because with the human hearing, there's this issue that whenever something's louder, it kind of sounds better. That's just how our ears are made and how our ears respond to frequency. So if you really want to know the difference between like, oh, has this EQ or has this plugin really made a difference? A lot of plugins have this little button where it like auto adjusts the volume, and that's really useful for that. And that's kind of what I try to do here. And pre-cleanup, if you listen to this bass, listen to its tail, and if I turn this up, it becomes a lot tighter. So this is for sounds that have like a lot of reverb or delay or tails or some sort of noise in the back. Like for example, I'm gonna add this reverb right now just for an example. Like that's a tail. Pre-cleanup gets rid of it. Because the Phat rack is going to accentuate that super hard, and if you don't want that, that's the knob. Okay, I'm gonna do the next 3 ones all in one because they all do something similar, but they do sound different. A while ago, I've made these Vowel Morph racks, which are super useful for growls, but you can also use them for anything else. So I'm just gonna go through them real quick. Number 1, as you can see, every other macro is associated to the one before it. So it's kind of like a dry wet. So I'm playing a standard saw. If I move this first macro, it's not gonna do anything unless I turn up the second one. These arrows indicate what they relate to. So that's from E to A, that's from A to O, that's from E to A, and A to U. Also, I think I did it in a way where these EQs only turn on if you actually move this knob up. I think that might help your CPU a little bit. Number 2 has a similar layout at the top. E to A, U to A, and then the bottom ones are just straight up vowels. And the last one has a standard high pass, especially useful for pitch sweeps. And then all the other ones are just more vowel shapes. Especially useful to put this into the Growl Rack. This one specifically is already in there, but you could like replace it with any of the other 2. I've got one more before we go into the washouts that I've made, which are super useful for buildups and transitions. This is just a very basic like widening rack. There are 5 different chains that all do kind of something different to widen the sound. Like if you put it in a mono sound, it will give it stereo information without harming the mid signal. And as a demonstration, I'm just gonna pick a bass patch that is fairly mono. All right, this one's pretty mono. I'm gonna slow it down a bit. Okay, all right, let's turn this on. So it is adding stereo information in these 4 chains. This is the dry chain. Obviously, you can kind of tell that it gets a lot brighter, so this knob kind of takes care of that a little bit. All right, and last but not least, the washouts. So I've made 5 different ones, and I'm just going to show them to you, demonstrated on a basic saw sound. First one, Cyber. Sound disappears in the abyss. Obviously also works backwards. Next one, Flutter. Kind of like the name says, you can sort of expect something like that. I'm gonna play a chord. This one's especially fun to bring back down afterwards. Next one, Octave Grain Pitch. So it kind of has this grain delay, octave pitch reverb effect. I'm going to do it again with a chord because it's kind of fun. Very celestial. Next one, called Resonating. This one's interesting. If you keep holding the notes, when it's all the way up, you just keep holding them. And it kind of sounds cool. Let me just show you.
So it does add some weird resonance to whatever is coming in. And the last one's called Rhythm. Because it's meant for basses, it doesn't really add reverb, but it does make the sound thinner. But also adds this weird phaser, flanger, whatever combination. So pretty useful for something like... That delay came from the patch, not from this. Actually, wait, I've got one more for you. This one's different though. This is a MIDI rack, so you drag it in front of whatever synth or sampler you're using. And what I've made here is basically a rack that creates harmonies for you depending on whatever note you're playing. So we've got these two macros, key and increase voices. So key is set to C right now, so I'm gonna play a C minor scale, and there are 0 voices. So this number down here doesn't equate to how many voices. You can see how many voices are gonna be added on this little keyboard down here in Serum actually. So we've got like up to 4 additional voicings. And then if I play different notes, you automatically get some nice voicings. So you can do something like... And then if you're in a different key, you can obviously change this knob up here. So if you're in F, yeah, I should add that all these voicings only like fit a minor scale. So this is just a little idea I just had, and I just had to make that because I wanted to give that away for a while. Actually, I just had a little idea with this. So I added an arpeggiator in front of this that's set to 16th notes, a really short gate, and I've changed the transpose section here to distance plus 12 and steps to 2. So now we get something like this. And as you can hear, the sound kind of has a little bit of a release tail. And I've mapped the release length in Serum to the note velocity. And then I've added a MIDI velocity effect from Ableton. And I've just turned up the random. So at the end there, I was holding 2 notes at once, so the arpeggiator has to play more notes, so the pattern kind of sounds longer. So yeah, this is a cool way to play around with a MIDI effect rack that creates chords for you, and I hope you'll have fun with this and make something cool with it.
Oh, I actually forgot a rack that is very important. The Snare Ploink rack that'll turn any boring snare into a ploinky snare. For that demonstration, we're just going to take one from the Spicy Rhythm Drums 2-pack. I need a ploink-less snare. That was pretty basic. Let's try that. So here we got our snare, and I'm just going to turn the ploink rack on. Beautiful. So you've got 8 controls here. One is the tuning of the ploink. I'm just going to pitch the snare up as well. Why not? Then you've got the overall ploink strength. And as you can hear down here, can't hear anything. That's because there's a gate here. And you might want to adjust this gate strength depending on the input volume of the snare. Then you've got the length of the ploink, how stereo wide it's supposed to be, the overall ploink level, the ploink brightness, and the pre-delay of the reverb that's creating the ploink. Usually I want it to be rather instant, but maybe not super instant so it doesn't mess with the transient or something. Try one more snare just for fun. Obviously, the gate strength will also affect the length a little bit, so you want to dial this and the length in, kind of. All right, happy ploinking. So let's make a quick loop using the racks. I already started here a little bit. I loaded up the DX7 by Arturia and wrote these chords over here. And then I put the MIDI rack on them, as well as an arpeggiator, as we did before in the little demonstration. Also, a little bit of random velocity. And I took down this frequency range here a little bit. But I think I like this even more if this diverged instead of going up. So you can kind of see over here what's happening. So it's playing that chord from the middle outwards. I wonder what that sounds like with two steps. That's kind of cool. Maybe we can bring that in later. So we have this sweet little melody as a start here. And then I wanted to put a sub under this, but like a saw wave sub. I kind of place these notes. I made a saw wave in here with a little bit of glide. And then just because I want to use the racks, I put the Detune rack on here and then an EQ8. Let's draw a little background bass line for this. Maybe a little variation over here. That is very beautiful. Okay, I loaded up some drums that I'm just gonna sprinkle over here. This is kind of going into a garagey direction. This ARP already sounds a little forte-y. I have nothing against that. So I'm gonna grab some rim shots. Yeah, something like that. And we do want to shuffle this, I think. So let me load up a groove real quick. Swing this thing. It's a bit strong, might take down the overall amount. That's cool. I kind of need this ARP to be shuffled too now. And there is a swing setting in here, but I don't know if this is going to work. That works, but it's a little too fast. And there's no real setting in here to adjust that. If anyone knows if there is a way to adjust the swing strength in here, let me know. That's kind of cool too. Just have it become some sort of glossy background texture. That could be cool with an autopan on it. Oh god, I'm getting so sidetracked already. I'm just gonna let it happen, okay? Okay, enough of that. It is kind of fun, but I feel like fitting that into what I'm making right now is going to take too long. All right, I'll leave it on the swing setting because that sounds okay. Maybe I just have to increase the swing on the drums to match it, and then we should be fine. Yeah, let's just do that. All right, next up, I will add a little melody-ish lead sound, and we are going to use the Distortion Delay rack on this. Okay, I kind of want this thing to have some soft attack and release. Plus, I want the master tune to be drifting up and down a little bit. Maybe less drift. Kind of sounds cool with the amp attack. What if this was a triangle wave? Sounds kind of cool when that's distorted. Something like that. Let me just draw that in real quick. Sweet. All right, a little bit of low cut. Nice. And some overall delay and reverb afterwards. what is the next rack we can use? I think I'm gonna use the Growl Rack to make some growls, but then we'll filter them so they just kind of like come up like whales out of an ocean. Let's see. So I'll start just with a saw wave and the Growl Rack. And I want these to come up from like an octave below the low F. So kind of like that. And then they'll have a filter on them, so they'll only get the top end when they reach the summit of the pitch movement. Like there, for example. Let's do the pitch bend. Gotta get the LFO speed right. Yeah, something like that. And maybe different phaser frequency. I think moving these up is also gonna do something like one of the Vowel filters here. It's a bit high, and then maybe have some other one come up at the end. Gets a bit messy there, but it's sort of what I want. Let's remove the white noise. Don't really need the vocoder, but everything else seems kind of okay. Now let's just add a little filter behind this. That'll make this dive up from the depths. Something like that. And now, since we're just sending a saw wave in here, we can now make this a little bit nicer by editing this. Let's see what we got in here that could help make this growl more growly. Why are you not updating? Hey. Yeah, that's kind of fun. Maybe have some movement over here as well with a filter. That's kind of cool. And I do want it to delay away after it came up. I'm just going to try the distortion delay again. That is kind of what I had in mind. I might just keep that instead of trying to dial in a complicated delay right now. Just going to do this. Remove a little bit of harshness. Do want to make the filter sweep a little more dramatic. Cool. I actually like that more. Let's see, if we have a saw going through the filter and then... I was trying to keep the original tonality with this, but might just... that's kind of cool. Ooh. Sounds like some alien dolphin, I love it. The question is, can I bring down the pitch without affecting the speed? Could also be a horse. Could be like some horse neighing. I like it though, I'll keep it. This is cool. But for consistency of the sound, I'll see if I can add a sub and cut off the low end of everything else but the sub. Oh, I forgot to put it on direct out. Okay, but still kind of work. Has sub. Ah, sub can even be a saw. Sweet. Okay, this is kind of a cool sound. Now an alternative one that's like kind of the response for when the chord changes. So we're in C there. We go between F and C. So we'll have to be here, but I also want this to be different. That's a bit extreme. Faster. I think we can make the stereo wide. Maybe not that much. Yeah, and then have the filter close a little slower on this one, so the articulation sounds a bit different. Yeah! Oh, this is kind of cool. It's just a bit loud, but other than that... I don't know what kind of genre we're making here, but... Oh, kind of has the same pitch as this. Yeah. Almost place a meep there. These could probably profit from some pitch map, but I don't want to use pitch map on everything. We've done that enough. All right, just for fun, let's use the Ploink rack on the snare. Probably gonna have to adjust the gate. And then we can even automate the tune to go up when the chord changes, because right now it's hitting an F, and then it could hit a G when it changes to C minor. Cool. Also, I might just want to, because this snare doesn't really have a lot of low end, I might just want to accentuate that. So the Ploink rack has a little more to work with. Kick can be a bit louder. Do I want any side chaining? It kind of sounds nice without any. Maybe just a slight bit for the kick. Delete all the other things. I have no idea what this is. I'm gonna add some hi-hats real quick. Okay, next up, I have an idea to use the texture rack on these growls after the filter. And I'm gonna do the thing that I did in the demonstration. I'm gonna open these up and change the erosion to sine. So let's see what we got here. Nice. I leave this open so you can see how this is reacting. Maybe a little bit lower on the frequency. Now up here was kind of nice. Yeah, that gave it a little more clarity up there. That's kind of cool. And then maybe we can do the same thing. I'm just going to duplicate this over here on the other one. Put it after the filter. Up there is kind of nice. Adds in a little bit of top end. That's cool. And then let's make a sort of re-C downwards pitch movement fill here at the end. That goes exactly like that. Yeah, so sort of from this C down to the C 1 octave below. Set the pitch bend, automate the pitch bend. And I'm just gonna draw the curve I want the filter to do in here. Something like that. And let's detune this. No width, distortion. And let's put the Phat rack on there. Maybe even the Phat and Wide combination rack. Play a little bit with the input volume. Add OTT in here. Yeah, why not? So this is cool, but I kind of need a second filter after this OTT in here. Maybe not that strong, but yeah, I kind of wanted to come up. I'm just going to automate that too over the course of half a bar. Yeah, something like that. The low C is a bit very low, so maybe an octave up for the whole thing. Yeah, that's cool. And maybe it can dive down. Yeah, I can dive down a little more like that. And I like using the hyper as a stereo thing here, like this. See if we can do anything with the Gnarl Rack on there. That's an interesting overtones. We don't need to widen it that much. And how much do we want to detune? Just for fun, let's try a square wave. Oh, and let's automate the volume too. Cool, sounds fine. Maybe a little bit of noise. And maybe actually let's use the texture thing again, but this time in its usual mode. Yeah, I might not even need this noise, because this sounds better. And reacts a little more dynamically. So now in this case, the pre-low cut is important because if I have this on 0, it's just kind of always on. And now it's reacting more to the higher frequencies. That's fun. Maybe use both. And in Reese fashion, phaser has to be part of this. That's cool. Yeah, something like that. Let's duplicate this over here so we got the automation. And then as a last thing, maybe after this, I kind of need something on the 1 because it sounds empty now there. Like a very, very soft purple Lamborghini yoink thing-ish. See what we can do. Let's just go classic and use triangle waves. With FM from B, U turn off, and get this, and then, get over there. And then this sort of on that kind of setting. And you a little bit up. More. Yeah. Let's use a bandpass, maybe. I rarely use bandpasses. It's time. With sub, distort. Don't distort that much. And again, the stock Phat rack. Let's try 2. That's kind of nice. I'm just going to throw an echo on there afterwards. And let's see what that looks like under an EQ. Yeah. And then again over here. And that whole thing can be louder, I think. Let's adjust this a little bit. And I think this is a moment to use the shifter rack. So let's put that before all the Phat racks. Ha, sweet. What I like to do with this a lot is there's like lots of odd harmonics and weird odd overtones, and then you can kind of tell that it sounds like it's going into tune, and now it's hitting that F. And you can find the same spot if you go down at around the same number, just negative. So that's cool too. Now it's hitting the C. But I kind of like this one up here better. The only annoying thing is, if we now want this to happen on the C here as well, that frequency we dialed in over here might not work anymore. It's a little bit off. It's a little bit too high, so I've got to automate that. There's a bit of pitch drift here in the echo. I might turn that down a bit. Cool. I adjusted the ploink of the snare a little bit and pitched the snare up too, so it's a bit more snappy. I like it. The whoop is pretty loud now, but it sounds kind of cool. Maybe bring that down a bit and sweet, we've made a loop and we've used a bunch of the racks. Let's see, how many did we use? There's the MIDI rack, the delay, which by the way, I'm also going to put into the pack, of course. I totally forgot about that one because I use it all the time. We use the distortion delay, the Phat rack, the shifter, the texture, the Gnarl, the Growl Rack, and the Detune, 9. And the Ploink rack, that's 10. Sweet. I know this is like some weird like chill genre that we made. I don't know what this is, but I kind of like it. And even though a lot of these racks are, as I said, more useful for heavy bass sound design, it was still useful for something this chill and vibey too. So yeah, enjoy, have fun with them, and let me know if you make anything cool with them. You know how to do that. Just put it on YouTube with if Virtual Riot sees this kind of name. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you all learned something. Have fun with the Ableton racks. I'm putting the link to my Patreon where you can download them in the description. You can also get the project file for the little thing that we just made there. And you can download it and mess with it. If you want to remix it, that's all good. Post it on YouTube and put my name in the title and then I'll see it or something. So yeah, have fun and see you next time.